This crowd rises to its feet. Vaccaro slammed it home. Garland left wing, free ball. Perfect! Garland went to the lane, lobbed to Mobley. Pow! And Allen blocked the shot at the rim. Pow! With the left hand and a foul.
Welcome to the Chase Down Podcast, part of the Cavs media family. I'm your host, Justin Rowan. The Chase Down is presented by Fubo, the official streaming partner of the Cavs. Watch over 350 channels of live sports and TV, including FanDuel Sports Network without cable. There's no cost and no commitment. Try for free at FuboTV.com/Cavs. The Cleveland Cavaliers now have their third double-digit winning streak of the season, thanks to two come-from-behind wins against the Boston Celtics and the Portland Trail Blazers. Joining me today is my co-host, Carter Rodriguez. Carter, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing all right, bro. Just working out some kinks with the new computer, so my bad. Obviously it feels really good. The Cavs haven't had a tremendous amount of ugly wins this year. That just kind of hasn't been what's factored into their year so far. And it's honestly kind of stunning that, it's taken this long to even have like two or three of them, where it's like a game where nothing's going right against the Blazers, a huge come down from a huge win in Boston on Friday night, and they have to gut one out. We talk about that 2018 team that won like 8, 9, 10 in a row to start the year, and like 8 of those 10 were hideous, and they were winning, but it didn't feel great. Like, we really haven't had a lot of those this year, and like it does feel like a super validating weekend for the Cavs between this and a resounding comeback against the Boston Celtics.
Yeah, and this felt like a perfect storm for a potential letdown game against the Portland Trail Blazers. You are not only coming off an incredibly emotional victory over the Boston Celtics, you're also dealing with it being an afternoon game. We have seen weird things tend to happen with those afternoon games. It's a quicker turnaround time. No Donovan Mitchell in this game. That's obviously going to make things a little tougher for them. And even though it displayed all the classic signs of it potentially being a trap game, I was really hoping it wasn't, because I was sitting here hoping that we could spend the majority of this podcast talking about, the Celtics game, because that's who we're measuring ourselves against. And trust me, we will be getting into that Celtics game. I have a lot of thoughts from it. But because this game was so dramatic against the Blazers, we obviously have to start there. And I think the clearest starting point for that game is DeAndre Hunter, who still has not had a 20-point game for the Cleveland Cavaliers. He just happened to have a 30-point one with 32 points and 7 rebounds, just on a night where everything felt a little herky-jerky, where guys were a little less predictable than their normal predictable selves. Hunter is just that steady presence. You know what he's going to bring on every single possession. And I really felt like the stability that he was bringing was almost as big as the shots he was hitting.
Yeah, well, there's just something to the size and the play style profile that kind of makes his game, I don't know, easy. And like, it just didn't require a lot of the surrounding context to be that good to be doing what he did. It was walk into catch and shoot threes, it was attack closeouts and draw fouls, and then just guard on the other end of the floor. Like, I just didn't feel like he had to. I don't know, obviously he took on a greater usage load than he's taken on thus far in his Cavs tenure, but it didn't feel like I've got to go run 30 pick and rolls because Donovan's not in the game. And that used to kind of be Karas's job. And like, that's kind of our best frame of reference for when Donnie is out is, all right, now Karas will step in and kind of run the offense a little bit. Hunter didn't do that. He just did what he's been doing more.
Yeah, at a higher volume, right? And I think that was the point that I was going to make about how when Karas was playing in these spots, it could kind of go either way, right? Like, there were the games where, and I think more often than not, when one of the guards was out, he would step up and he would have a big impact. But on some of those nights where, Darius is having a terrible game against Portland, like cannot hit any of his shots, any of his floaters, the normal stuff that he hits on a routine basis, it wasn't going down. Even when they showed him, getting those shots up in the timeout, I think he won 1 of 3 on those. Like, sometimes it's just not your night. And, some credit to him for sure for continuing to battle through that. But on a night where Darius wouldn't have it going, Evan up and down game, moments where he looked great, other times where he was a little out of control, and just nobody was really bringing that consistency to the table. I felt like sometimes Karras would get sucked into that. Like he would almost feed off of that energy and it would become more chaotic. Whereas in this spot, you had Ty Jerome once again step up with one of those guards out. And DeAndre Hunter, as you said, not playing outside of himself, but just cranking up the volume on what he already does so well. And I think that is one of the huge benefits of, this situation where we're sitting here with 50 wins through 60 games because we have so much depth, because we have, four guys that are probably top 30 players in the league. At the very least, we have 3 top 24 because we had 3 All-Stars. And when you take DeAndre Hunter from, kind of number 3 role in Atlanta to number 5 in Cleveland, where, if someone, Jared Allen having an off game against Boston, we can put DeAndre in and we can expect a little more from him in this spot because he is overqualified to be a 5th man. When you have that kind of luxury and you have the supporting depth around them, it is just going to help you have an insane floor when it comes to the regular season. But not only that, it's going to increase your margin for error when you're playing a top team like the Boston Celtics.
Yeah, man. I said this. I went on Bob Manning's Celtics show on Saturday night or Saturday afternoon. And I did just say that before the Hunter trade, I felt like there was no lineup context in which I would be really cool with benching Jared Allen. I really did pretty steadfastly believe that no matter what the matchups, pretty much no matter what the form was, the best shot was going to be with Jared at the 5 and Evan at the 4. And what Hunter has done is give Kenny a real legit high upside option on nights where one of the 2 bigs doesn't have it, one of the 2 bigs is in foul trouble, whatever it may be. He just doesn't have to do anything, and that's really important.
Yeah, it's really, really damn important. And, I probably would have liked to have seen, I understand going with Max in the starting lineup. I would have liked to have seen some minutes with the core 4 and DeAndre Hunter against the Boston Celtics. Just from an experimenting standpoint, I guess the first time that's going to occur is going to be in the playoffs, if it does in fact occur. But having that versatility, I think, is really big. And Kenny talked about it post-game after this win over the Blazers, where forget who asked the question, but a very good question. Oh, it was our buddy Mike Lucas, Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, asked, hey, this is the second time now where you've kind of closed the fourth quarter with Jared on the bench. And Kenny said, yeah, teams are putting some pressure on us. They're really downsizing. They have 3 or 4 guards out there, and that just requires a different kind of, mobility from a defensive standpoint, and having the flexibility to do that, where, Jared was not having a strong game against Boston. I thought he was playing pretty well tonight against Portland, but just, hey, the matchup is a little tricky. We are able to kind of counterpunch. We are able to, kind of dare you to go big, because if our scaled down lineup contains somebody that we were comfortable giving some small ball 5 minutes in this game.
Yeah. I got to say, I'm a little worried about Jared's hand. He's still wearing that wrap on it, and this is not a sourced report or anything like that. I just have noticed there's a few times where he's tapping the ball to his other hand. He even had that the shot that went in, but he had like a 15-foot left-handed floater. And I worry that
he's had some incredible left-handed finishes. There was the one against Boston where it was a lob and he just kind of deflected it in. He had that nice touch one where Darius found him underneath the basket. Definitely notice, he's shown the floater with the lefts even prior to this, but it feels like he's going to it just a little bit more. And I think you're seeing it sometimes in those contested rebound situations where he's just not securing it the way that he was even a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, and also I've also noticed it does short circuit the finishing just a little bit, you know? So I'm definitely keeping my eye on that. I know Jarrett's goal was to play all 82, and we'll see if he can do it. But yeah, that it just does jump out at me just a little bit that they have gone without him the last 2 games. And most importantly, gone without him at all, even in lineups without Evan.
Yeah.
That is not something that they've ever done before. And I don't know if that's we like it, and Hunter and Wade we think is enough length in the front court to survive, or if it's we feel we have to right this second. But I do think it bears keeping an eye on.
You know, it might fall into category 3 of we want to see if we're able to, like, let's try some stuff, right? I think that's important to keep in mind, where I think we saw playoff-like intensity from Cleveland and Boston in these last couple matchups. And honestly, every game that they've played this season, I feel like both teams have really got up for those games. But I would expect both sides have a little something that they're holding back, that they didn't show, during the regular season, that they may go to in the playoffs, whether it be Kenny changing up how he's going to counter Boston defensively, what types of looks he anticipates throwing at. I feel like we've played a very kind of normal regular season rotation for the most part against the Celtics. Now, you're not going to do Craig Porter Jr. in that matchup, but he still did go very deep within the rotation. And I don't know if that's going to continue in the playoffs. I don't know what changes are going to be there. So I think it's important to have that caveat, but maybe there is some element at least of, hey, Jarrett's at like 85% right now. Let's see if we can play Dean and Hunter as our lone bigs when Boston's going really small here with 6'9" Al Horford and a bunch of guards and wings.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I mean, Hunter is holding up. He had 7 boards in this one, 7 important boards. I thought he battled down the stretch as Portland kept counter punching and attacking the glass and trying to attack in transition and just be the more chaotic team. I thought they did a great job of just being like, nope, we're gonna end these possessions where they end. And again, it was not a clean game by any means, but like it just goes back to, your Virginia Cavaliers, Ty Jerome and DeAndre Hunter just won you the game, because Darius never really got into the game. Max didn't have a particularly clean game. They were fouling like absolute crazy. Garland had 4, Strus had 5, Hunter had 4, Mobley fouled out, which never happens.
No.
Like, it's just one of those games, man.
And that was part of why I felt like they were going to lose it. Like, even when they cut it to 10 to start the fourth, I was like, maybe there's a chance. But when you have, 70 free throws between the two teams, that's just going to lead to a choppy game where it's really tough to find a rhythm. And I thought Portland deserves a lot of credit. They played really hard.
Well, they've
have
been
a lot
playing
of
their asses off.
I think they won 14 of their last 19 games coming into that game. So, they've been playing really good basketball. There's someone that, is almost tailor-made to get you in one of these early afternoon games where you're coming off an emotional win. So they deserve a ton of credit. Tamari Kamara, it was fantastic. Denny had a great game. There's a lot to like with that Portland group. So I don't want to take anything away from them, but yeah, Darius did not have it going at all. That steal that he had at the end of the game may have really impacted the outcome there, because that was a fast break opportunity for Portland. But that was actually one of the few times that I've seen this season where it felt like he recognized he didn't have it going and went passive. And I don't think that's necessarily a good thing. But it seemed like he was not even trying to get those shots up down late. I felt like, he created some looks for guys. He was able to turn the corner offensively, but he just didn't seem to have confidence in his shot. I don't know if that's, working his way back from the hip. This is a short turnaround time from Boston, not feeling right, or if this was just one of those games where you didn't have your shot going, which certainly happens. But Definitely one of his worst offensive games of the season.
Yeah, I mean, he still got up 16 shots. It's not like he went full passive, but like he definitely was letting Ty be the run the offense down the stretch of the game. But the counter to that, of course, is Ty was the best player on the court for a lot of the game.
Yep.
And Ty was unbelievable. So like I'm hesitant to ding him too hard for that. In fact, it's funny that you kind of dinged him a little bit because I was going to go the other way where I go, hey, you don't have it. It's freaking March 2nd against the Blazers. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. Just whatever is the best road to getting them to a win. And I do think Ty running a lot of pick and roll was their best road to a win in that game.
Yeah. No, I think that's a very valid point. I just wanted to kind of highlight that's been unique, right? Like, I don't think we've seen that a whole lot this year. Even against Boston, one of the things I really enjoyed was he was assertive. He took those shots late, right? He hit that 3 to make it a 6-point game and then hit that dagger step back that basically iced the win against the Celtics. He was not afraid of the moment in that spot. So I don't know if it was just one of those nights where he didn't have it going, but it was definitely a tough night for him. But before we get into Boston, is there any other things you want to highlight with this Portland game?
I mean, Ty was a demon, man.
He was awesome.
He was so good, physical. He got him and Hunter got 19 combined free throw attempts, and Cavs role players just haven't been like, you don't normally see 2 Cavs role players combined for 19 free throw attempts in a game. It's just not really been their style. The core 4 typically eat such a big minutes load that it's hard to get there. Even from a usage perspective, but I thought they probably won the game with those 19 free throws, because in a game where nothing's easy, and by the way, even in this hideous game, they end up at 41.3% from 3. So I don't know, man. I guess they can't be too bad at shooting for too long, but I just thought Jerome was just yet another example of him being an absolute murderer for this team every time they need him to be. Every time they're like, they're just gonna put Kamara on you, but just figure it out. Figure it out, get to the rim. He had a couple nasty cross court passes out of the pick and roll. I thought he had a really, really great game as a playmaker. He had 6 assists to 1 turnover, and when you pair that with these 6, Justin, count them, 6 steals,
a career high.
It just felt like a really dominant floor game for him, and they needed someone to be an event player, and Hunter had the best scoring game. I felt like Jerome had the loudest game.
Yeah, and we've talked about how we stepped up in those games without Donovan or without Darius. At times, with the way Darius was shooting, it felt like neither of them were out there, right? So for him to step up in that way in a night where we really needed it, I thought was significant. Only other thing that I kind of had noted from this game was I still just fundamental basketball philosophy. I don't love the foul up 3. At least when there's over 10 seconds left. I think if you're down in the final 7 seconds and a team is drawing up something on the sideline, foul there. But particularly where, they used up their last timeout to advance the ball and didn't have an opportunity to call it and get a shot up at the end of regulation. That's just one of those little things where I understand what the numbers say, but just from a philosophical standpoint, I don't love the timing with that much time left in the game.
Yeah, it has felt a little bit like we're doing a thing we don't do that often. It's not, you watch some teams foul up 3 and it feels brutal. It feels really hard for the other team to account for. And I feel like when the Cavs have done it, it's felt like a thing they weren't doing last year. It just it doesn't feel.
It probably
as
feels
clean.
even weirder because we're never within 1 possession at the end of a game. That's happened 4 times this year.
So they don't have a ton of practice doing it, and it's just been a little rough. Last thing I'll say about this game, because I noticed that you're wearing it too. shout out to Nick Gilbert. It was bow tie night for the Cavs, and a cool night honoring their memory. Great appearances from the Gilbert family on the broadcast, talking about kind of Nick's legacy. All the work they're doing to cure NF, and just wanted to shout out the Gilbert family because even on a night that's celebrating a loved one that's passed away, it's still a hard, heavy thing to kind of deal with. So sending love to the boss man, and hope their family's doing good through what was probably a tough day for them.
Yeah, to totally agree with that. I appreciate you making note of that, and it's great to get a win. It's great to get a win on that night. I forget what the matchup was last year, but this is the third annual bow tie night, and absolutely we had to rock the pins for that. And it's good to keep the good vibes going, man. I mentioned that at the top of the podcast, but third double-digit winning streak of the season. That's nuts. Nobody else in the Eastern Conference has one of those this season.
Yeah, I saw someone, I forget who tweeted it. I think I retweeted it. But they said it was Cavs Jack on Twitter. I don't know if this is real. Didn't vet this, but he said before the season, the Cavs had 5 10-plus game winning streaks in franchise history. They have 3 this season alone.
It's absolutely bonkers.
I don't know if that's true. It sounds true. It sounds right. I mean, these are pretty rare. So the fact that they've done it this many times, just bananas. And
can I share a stat your way?
Of course.
Mark Stein shared this on a Substack just before we recorded, but Boston is currently, since the start of last year, 64-3 when they lead by 20 in a game. 2 of those 3 losses have come against your Cleveland Cavaliers.
Oh yeah, brother. I just think the season's been unbelievable, and we'll dive into the Boston stuff with the back half of the pod, and because I think that's the much more noteworthy game.
Yeah.
But I just cannot believe this team is 50-10, dude. That is a banana stat. I mean, the Phil Jackson club is like 40 wins before 20 losses. How about 50 wins before 11? It's absolutely bananas. I updated this stat going after tonight. I tweeted out a little while ago, updated tonight. Cavs have had 2 rough stretches this season, and rough in quotation marks. So they're not even that rough. Mid-November to end of November, they lost 3 out of 5. And then mid-January to the end of January, they lost 5 out of 8. The rest of the year, they are 45-2.
Seems pretty good. And, it's easy to get caught up on the Cavs' larger aspirations for this season, right? Like, particularly coming off that Boston game, I couldn't help but think that next time we see this team is going to be the Eastern Conference Finals. And I will continue to speak that into existence. I feel like we're going to get there. But the next time it's possible to play them is the Eastern Conference Finals if you're a little superstitious. But it's so easy to lose track of that, right? And sometimes it's easy to lose track of things in general, which is why Zoom AI Companion is so important, Carter, because only you can do your best work. Zoom AI Companion can help you do the rest, like automatically taking notes, answering meeting questions, and helping you respond to your coworker. Available at no additional cost with eligible paid plans. Work happy with Zoom AI Companion.
Before we dive into the Boston stuff, I just want to say Pale White Dot just said in the chat, 74% of our wins this season are part of winning streaks, which is hilarious, and I'm pretty sure that's accurate.
It spiritually feels right at the very least. That's a great point. And the funny thing about that Celtics game, I'm going to start it off. I don't even know if sour note is the right way to put this, but my takeaway from that game is the same as if we would have lost it, which is I'm a little frustrated that I feel like I didn't learn anything from that game. I am very happy to see that this Cavs team is once again resilient as hell. They came back multiple times. Like the fact that they, within the first quarter, they cut that down to 6. They cut it down to 3 later on. Boston extended the lead to 17. They had the energy for multiple comebacks. That's not something I've learned in that game. I know that this team is resilient. I know that they are tough as hell and that they can come back. I know that this team is a team that can close out. They have not lost a game that they were leading going into the fourth quarter. What I saw on Friday night is exactly what I thought the Cavs were. They are a team that has everything they need to beat the Boston Celtics. They have the personnel, they have the talent, they are capable of doing it. I don't know if they're ready to do it. And that's not something we're going to learn until a playoff series. And that's something we might not learn until, midway through the series. We didn't learn about that with the 2016 Cavaliers, basically until game 5, because those 2 blowout losses to start that series, that hurt. That sucked. It looked like they didn't belong, but they dug deep and they found a way to reopen that series. We may not learn that until midway through the series against the Celtics, but I remain convinced that they have what it takes. It's just going to be about whether or not the guys are ready to execute at the consistent level necessary to beat Boston 4 out of 7 times.
Yeah, it's the 4th straight game where they came out really tight. And I feel like there was just a little bit of that letting perfect be the enemy of good creep into their process. And that's a little scary, Mm-hmm. We've said it all year. They have shredded much better defenses than the Boston Celtics. And the fact that we're 4 first quarters in, like, I don't know if they top 25 in any of them.
Mm-hmm.
And even the first 6 minutes of each quarter probably is even worse. I feel like there's just a general tightness that takes over the team. Wide open threes. There's that extra half second of loading up and looking at the rim. Yeah. It's just like this. I don't know if they want it too much. I don't know if it is the anxiety of playing Boston in terms of they are going to avalanche you if you're not careful. So there's this, like, a little Sasha Pavlovich, their offense is their defense, where you're worried about letting their machine get going. So you feel like you have to, like, build up some. You have to maintain connection, but we have seen it. However, I will say I think that we have to give them credit for their ability to find offense and find an offensive flow for 43 minutes of this game.
Yeah.
For 43 minutes, they put up about a 144 offensive rating against a defense they have not been able to figure out. Because that's if I have anxieties, it's are they mentally ready and are they able to figure out how to score on this team consistently and get
my big question.
Get the offensive death machine going the way they have. And maybe 144 is a pretty good offensive rating for 43 minutes. Do you feel like they found anything there, or do you think that was just more reliance on Donovan Mitchell excellence?
I don't think it was more reliance on Donovan Mitchell excellence, just because I did feel like we got valuable contributions from a variety of guys during certain stretches, right? Like when Evan Mobley got in foul trouble in the third quarter, Jared, even though he had a tough game, he went out there in those minutes, bought Mobley some time, got 8 points, got a couple of rebounds, extra possessions where he was fighting for it, and they deflected out of bounds. That was really important. Evan Mobley, awesome fourth quarter. Like, he really stepped up and was assertive on both ends of the floor. I think it was 11 points and 8 rebounds in the fourth quarter.
Yeah,
that was awesome.
Filthy.
Darius, I mentioned it before, but hitting that big 3 in the clutch and then that step back on Hauser to ice the game, that's big cojones stuff. Like, I'm happy to see that. I thought Ty Jerome gave them good stretches. I thought even Sam Merrill did a good job competing at times. Isaac Okoro, I want to get into him in depth, but I loved what I saw from him. Not only in this Boston game, but I liked a lot of his minutes against Portland as well. I don't feel like it was just more Mitchell greatness, but I do think that one of my big takeaways was Mitchell greatness. And that was one of our takeaways against the last game that we won versus Boston, where we said, I think correctly, we deserve to pat ourselves on the back. Sometimes I'm a little hesitant to do that. But we've talked all season about how, you can look at the impact metrics and you can say Darius is the primary driver of the offense. Evan's the primary driver of the defense. but that has been facilitated because of Donovan Mitchell's leadership. He has enabled them to do that. I think in these matchups, this is where you see, oh yeah, Donovan is the best player on the team. Donovan is that guy that's ready to meet the moment. He is so proficient against the Boston Celtics. He's phenomenal. And before I let you talk, Carter, I do need to fact check your one note, because you said, I don't know if we scored 26 in a first quarter. We did outscore Boston 28-4 in the game we won in Cleveland. But to your point, in that
28
game,
to 24.
28-24. Did I say that?
You said 28-4. I was like, what?
That was that's a lead only Boston could blow. But no, it was 28-24. So we did eclipse that number. But to your point, I do recall us starting off slow at the beginning of that game.
Okay. Well, I do think the Donovan thing, it's been, I don't know, I'm not trying to act like it's a bad thing that he's going nuts against this team, but it is kind of a meaningfully different road to their points than what they've been all year. And I'm not quite sure how to reconcile that. I also just don't know why Boston cannot do anything with this guy. Like, because even when, I feel like Donovan has been good all year. Obviously, he's been I think he's going to end up first team All NBA by the end of the year.
Yeah.
But there have been teams that have at least made it hard for him. And I feel like Boston, it's not been hard for him, really. Even when he's had less efficient games in this season series, it's been just because he's missed shots.
Yeah.
As opposed to getting knocked off of his rhythm. Like, I feel like there are a lot worse teams where he has to work way harder to get to his spots. I asked Bobby Manning on yesterday's pod, I was like, why can't you guys do anything with him? Shouldn't you be like tailor-made? And they're not. I don't know. They can't, whether it's Drew or Derek White. Like, it doesn't feel like Boston has a tremendous amount of answers. I don't know if it's the bigs and the drop coverage or what, but man, he has just been electric against that matchup, and it's my number one reason to feel like we can go into a series and beat them.
Yeah, and to your point, I think it is a little different than our overall profile, right? How we get points throughout the course of the season, but that's kind of what it needs to be. When you're playing elite teams, you need your best guys to step up to the moment and be there. In a lot of these games against Boston where Mitchell has scored, other guys have been struggling. I think that was true even at times in this game. But when you look at it, again, similar lesson to previous games against Boston where we said, Darius, after that first game, we're like, if Darius just had a B game, like not even a B plus, that's probably enough to win. The game that we had just lost at home versus Boston, if Evan just has a B game, that's probably enough to win that game. I thought Evan and Darius both had B games. They both struggled at times, but Mobley 17, 12, and 3. Darius 27 and 3. Like, that you can live with. That is enough to get us over the hump. I thought both of them had good enough games. So I don't really feel like, it felt like Donovan's scoring really did still come kind of within the flow of the offense. It didn't feel like, okay, we're standing around and watching. I thought there was enough guys getting involved. I thought we were still being creative with how we got him those looks. But if I had to give you a thesis for why he has success versus Boston compared to, let's say, Lou Dort, I feel like Derek White and Drew Holiday, they move their feet well. They try to poke at the ball and kind of get steals and stay in good position and, do a good job of bodying you up. Lou Dort, he's not letting you move. Like, he's going to draw some fouls, but that guy is like a linebacker. He is impeding you where you're trying to go on the court and really disrupting you. I feel like Derek White and Drew Holiday really trust their lateral quickness and aren't looking to disrupt the dribble as frequently. So Mitchell's still able to get to his spots. Even Darius in the kind of one guard lineup, that first run that we had was with Mitchell out of the game. And Darius basically had a 6-0 run himself where he scored on Derek White and then created shots, 2 assists. I think it was to Max Strus and Jared Allen. But he was still kind of getting by those guys. And I just feel like you are able to get to your spots against the Boston guards in ways that you aren't able to against a Lou Dort or even a Jalen Suggs. Remember how different it felt coming off that Magic series?
The ball pressure is really, I think it can knock Donnie out of his game a little bit, and that's just not Boston's style. They wait for you to, it's like your older brother letting you get past him and poking the ball out from behind. That's,
I always was. I would come for the block from behind, but
naturally, you scumbag older brother, the worst among us.
I was getting chased downs long before this pod, buddy.
I know. But representing the little brothers here, I just think there is a matchup thing with him where he just feels really comfortable. I mean, he is now the all-time leading point scorer by per game average against the Boston Celtics, surpassing Michael Jordan as the only two guys that have ever averaged 30 plus against the Celtics. Mm-hmm. He was freaking phenomenal in that game. I wonder how they can handle games where he's not phenomenal, because I do think we need to talk a little bit about how Darius has played.
We need to talk about how Darius is playing, and we got to talk about Ev. That is one of my central frustrations of that matchup is I'm annoyed Porzingis didn't play. I get it. He had the flu. I don't believe he played today either. Drew Holiday, that injury is probably fairly serious. At least it's going to cost him some time. So it's not like that was gamesmanship, but it was annoying to not have Porzingis out there because I wanted to see what Evan could do there, right? That was one of the main things that we were trying to highlight. And I think it's worth noting, if you look at kind of net ratings versus the Cavs, Boston has a -9 net rating when Porzingis is on the court versus Cleveland. Even though we can't score on them, they struggle offensively in those minutes. And when you look at the Drew Holiday minutes, -10 net rating versus the Cavs. So on the one hand, you could say, hey, if they were taking shots away from Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown on one of their best combined scoring nights of their entire career together, that probably would have been a net positive. You could probably even argue, hey, this was they've been net negatives versus the Cavs this season. You can do all of those kind of arguments, but from a fact collecting standpoint, I would have loved to see them out there because that was one of the main things I wanted to see. But you're right. I think when it comes to Darius and his efficiency against Boston, I think that is something that we need to discuss.
Yeah. So I think the impulse for everyone has been to talk about Darius on the defensive side of the floor. And I think, Tatum took 2 field goal attempts against him 2 days ago. Mm-hmm. Jalen definitely got more. And Jalen, by the way, scares me much more on a switch than Tatum because he'll just bury guys and go all the way to the rim or get so damn close that he's taking a midi from floater range, basically. And he's a much nastier, I think, switch attacker than Tatum, who tends to lean on his Kobe
to get to
gene.
the basket every time. That's one of the biggest differences.
Yeah. However, Boston had in the 43 minutes following the insane explosion to start the game, where they hit 7 of their first 9 3-point attempts, Boston mustered a 112 offensive rating. That is well below their season average, and it's very important that the Cavs be able to outscore 112 per 100 possessions.
Mm-hmm.
That's with Tatum and Brown taking 61 field goal attempts. The defense held up, and I'm watching the game too, guys. It doesn't feel good to watch Darius get beat up.
No,
on some of these possessions. And they did start making some tweaks in the fourth quarter that I want to talk about later. But it doesn't feel good to watch Tatum, put his shoulder into Darius's chest and knock him back 5 feet and hit a midi over him, or even bury him and get all the way to the rim before help can come. That doesn't feel good. I don't care. The only thing I care about is the points per 100 possessions. I care about how efficient their offense is. And their offense wasn't that freaking efficient 2 nights ago. Until that, and I thought, and I was waiting, sorry to monologue a little bit here, man, but I was waiting for the Tatum explosion game and the Brown explosion game, because in the first 3 matchups, I kept saying, I'm fine with this strategy, even though it doesn't look good, even though the worst case scenario is those guys go off for like 60 points on you. Well, it happened, and they still didn't score that efficiently, Justin.
And the funny thing was, it largely happened on Jared and Evan. They were hitting a lot of shots over the bigs, whereas it did seem like the broadcast was waiting to make the Darius point, and Tatum only hit 1 shot on him all evening. There was a few possessions. I agree with you. I think the Brown one is tougher for Darius on those switches because he's really going to continue to work his way through. He's going to elbow his way to the rim, and there was a couple times where Darius held his ground well. Brown missed the shot but got the offensive rebound. You got to make sure that you're cleaning up those possessions. But I thought Darius did a good job. There's a difference between him getting targeted because he's the shortest guy on the court and everybody else, is largely good defenders. I think you still see them target Donovan in the same way when he's the lone guard out there. That's what Boston's going to do. They are a heavy ISO team. They try to get the advantageous switches, and they're going to go at the smaller guards. There's a difference between that and attacking Trae Young, who's offering, clean paths to the basket, getting, blowing by Luka Doncic easily because he's not trying on the defensive end. That's not what this is. If you're talking about a not good mid-range shooter taking not great shots over Darius, and the help defense is going to be there if he gets to the rim, I will continue to live with that. But I do wonder what type of impact that has, on Garland's efficiency too, right?
Yeah.
Because he's taking a pounding out there. And, maybe there's some correlation there. Maybe it's, just happens to be what's happened so far this season. I do think, Drew Holiday and Derek White are terrific defensive guards. They're going to make things tough. Carter, if you had to guess, what do you think Darius is shooting on wide open threes versus Boston this season?
Bad would be my guess. I'm going to say 30%.
He is shooting 41% on wide open threes versus Boston this year.
That's disappointing.
And that's over 4 attempts a game. If you want to take out that's with that awful game where, he missed everything. If you're taking that game out of the mix, it's 44%. He's shooting really, really well on those. What do you want to guess he's shooting on contested threes? Very tight coverage threes versus Boston this season.
0?
67% on those tightly contested threes.
He's shooting 33% overall.
Know where he's really struggling? And this matches my eye test. I was thrilled that these numbers match my eye test. Those late contests, those, 4 to 6 feet away range. I noticed that all of those against Boston were long in this game. It was like he was thinking, okay, do I attack? Do I pull? Those in-between shots versus Boston, he's shooting 0% on those threes. He's missed every single one of those threes.
How many attempts do you have that at the ready?
I don't have that at the ready. I can look that up for you, but I know he's the wide open ones, 4.3 attempts. He's hitting those wide open ones well. It's the in-between game where he's shooting 24% from the floor and 0% from 3.
Well, that just tracks with the overall Darius experience against Boston. I feel like they speed him up, man. I feel like the floaters are coming a bit, a half beat early or a half beat late, as opposed to their perfect, indecisive times. I noticed he's short arming a lot of them, which is like a dead giveaway that he's rushing. He's just trying to get him out before the help comes and blocks. Putting some layups off glass too hard and then they're rimming out. I haven't seen the scoring efficiency. And that's why I think if the Cavs have a Darius Garland problem against the Boston Celtics right now, I actually think if I'm Kenny Atkinson in this coaching staff and I'm Darius Garland, I am worried much more about the offense because if he is playing at his normal Darius Garland level, then I am even more confident that they can weather the storm with him defensively. Yeah. I think it gets harder to justify the aesthetics of what we're watching if he is, as he currently is, shooting 33% from the field, 33% from 3, and taking more field goal attempts than his points per game. He's averaging 19 field goal attempts in his 4 games. He's averaging 18.8 points. 2 nights ago, he had 20 points on 23 field goal attempts. And it's like, well, if we're not going to get, peak Darius, I understand why you might be worried about this matchup, because the whole value of him, the value proposition gets harder to work with. And he's been great against physical defenses.
Yeah.
He killed Oklahoma City in that win against some of the best guard defenders in the NBA. But he's got to figure out how he's going to kill Boston. I'm not going to include last year's playoff series as part of the sample, just because I just don't think he was himself. But I haven't seen a track record of him figure this out yet. And and if you're listening to this, we are like the biggest pro Darius podcast out there.
Mm-hmm.
He has to be himself if they want to win a series against the Boston Celtics.
To answer your question, those in-between shots, 0 of 7 on those. And it's actually higher on the wide open ones. If you take out that first game, he's shooting 54% on wide open threes, 7 of 13 after that first game against Boston. So it really does match the eye test. Like, I think the fact that he is finishing well on tightly contested shots and he is finishing well on wide open shots, that to me tracks. Like, that is what I'm seeing against Boston. It's the in-between where I feel like he's pressing, where it's, should I pull? And then when he decides to pull, it's a half beat too slow and he rushes the shot. He rushes the floater. We saw some in those earlier matchups where the floaters are hitting the back rim. The 3-pointers that, hit the back rim. He's someone that has great touch. And I think that is one of those spots where I don't think that reflects being scared of the moment, because he's very clearly still being assertive. He's taking those shots in clutch time. He's not passing up open looks. I think that is a ready for the moment question of, can you maintain the composure against the defense that specifically is trying to rush you, that is trying to make you second guess. He needs to be consistently assertive and attack those late closeout situations. He needs to attack when it's 4 to 6 feet away and you have that open 3. Do not hesitate. Take that shot. But to me, overall, when I'm looking at these numbers, I like seeing, that he's shooting 54% on those open looks after that first game and 41% overall, right? I like that he's finishing well when he's contested, because I think when someone's contesting you and it's tight coverage, you got, Derek White on your hip or whatever the case may be, what you're supposed to do there, right? Like, if enough defense collapses, he's going to make the right pass. 7 assists to 1 turnover. That's what you want to see against Boston. If you're finishing, like, all right, I'm going up with the shot. There's no indecision in that spot. It's the in-between spots that I am noticing that he is rushing his decision-making, and I think that comes down to composure.
Yeah, I think, I don't know. Maybe it's a bit of wanting it too much. Maybe it's that, just leaning, a little bit of regression into past bad habits. But I do think it matters. I do think that you need to see this, because it just gets hard to justify the defensive pain and the knots you're putting yourself in defensively to help to accommodate the size disadvantage you have when he's not scoring efficiently on his end. So I do think a lot of that stuff, I won't care. I don't think the aesthetics will ever be good with Boston, because they are mismatch hunters. But I do want to just get back to
what
that.
Can I just say, if we're looking at the last 3 games against Boston, because the first one, he was gassed. Kenny said, they had to give him a game off, and it was just an off night. Does it sway you at all that in the following 3 games, he's averaging 22 points per game, he's shooting 40% from the field and 43% from 3 versus Boston?
Not that much. I still don't think he's been at his level. I think at the win he was.
Yeah.
But I just feel like I
feel like you're not going to get Darius at his level consistently in a series against Boston. Like, I think bottom line, you're going to have below your season averages there. But if I'm getting 22 and 6 on 40-43 shooting, and he's not turning the ball over, I think that I think you can win with that.
I
If you're
want to see
getting what you're
him.
supposed to from Donovan and Evan.
Maybe we're not going to see him at an A plus a lot. I think he needs to find his way to a B plus. I don't think he has hit a B plus game yet against Boston.
Okay.
And I know that seems like a persnickety distinction to make, but like I do think it matters. And I think their margins against a team this good are so thin that there's also the rising tide effect that Darius has that no one else on this team has. No one else affects this team's overall offensive health like Darius Garland. There's a reason the whole team looked like they were playing in the mud today, because Darius was having an awful game and couldn't get the machine wasn't humming. Like the key conductor for the train wasn't making sure everything was going. So that's why the B plus thing matters more with him than like I if you were to say, Carter, you can have 7 B plus games from Darius or Evan against Boston, and the other guy is going to fluctuate between like a C plus and a B minus, I might still pick Darius. I really,
Ooh.
I know I know that would probably be a controversial take. That would probably put me in the minority, but I think Evan's baseline is so much higher because of what he can do on defense, how he can duck in, and how he can ruin games in a 6-minute stretch like he had 2 days ago. Whereas I think for the overall health of how the offense is functioning, if Darius is cooking, I just feel so good about everyone else's ability to eat just by being around.
Yeah. No, I think there's validity to that. And I think that there is room for growth. I like that he's not scared of the matchup, that he is continuing to be aggressive. I like the fact, that he hit those shots at the end of the game. I think it's really going to come down to settling down. And, I hate bringing this up because I think all 4 games did start with the Cavs having a slow start. And I think that is something that we need to keep an eye on, right? That you can't have that happen in a playoff series where you are putting yourself behind the 8 ball to start, every game to start a series. I do think that there's maybe something to the fact that the last 2 games were particularly rough, and both of them were coming off of 40-point wins. They beat Dallas by 43 prior to the previous game. You beat Orlando by 40, and you're playing, very loose. You don't have to play as focused. And I'm interested what that adjustment looks like going into a playoff series. But it could go the other way, right? Like, you may not have the good vibes. You might be coming off a tough playoff series and you tighten up even more against Boston. I think that this is a trend that is legitimate. I don't think it is, context dependent on those two. I hate bringing it up, but it is something that was in the back of my mind of, you almost want to be in a rhythm going in. And I feel like those types of wins take you out of that rhythm entirely.
Yeah, I think there is something to that. It's always a weird, we're playing a different sport now, a ramp up. Like we always felt that about the Cavs in the finals when they would just romp through the Eastern Conference. And then all of a sudden they'd have to go play the Warriors death machine. And it's like, oh, whoa, slow down. We're getting up to speed here, fellas. And
the most damage Toronto would do to us in a playoff series was getting us used to attacking DeMar DeRozan and Jonas Valanciunas.
Did the Cavs win a single game 1 against the Warriors in any of those 4 finals?
God, no.
I didn't think so.
No, we didn't. No,
they didn't. So, I do think there's a little bit of that comes into this. Obviously, it's not a great excuse. I hope the players wouldn't make that excuse.
No,
but it is interesting,
and I don't mean it as that.
I know you're not trying. We're just evaluating everything across the board. I do want to talk about my favorite tweak or my favorite learning from the game, which is that after the Cavs won the second game of the series, me and you got on this podcast and we both defended and agreed with the switching philosophy, even if Darius was going to get beat up in the process. But you said, I want to see them fight over screens a little bit harder. And I said, that sounds nice in theory, but it does open you up to slips, to miscommunications, and both those things kill you against this Boston team and gets there, because when you mess those exchanges up, you put 2 on the ball, and then all of a sudden the Boston 3-point machine is cranked up. So I pushed back, and I felt like we left it in a pretty good place. And through game 3 and through, I felt like 3/4 of game 4, mostly still the soft switch. So Darius's man comes up and screens for one of the Jays, and they just kind of do a pass off. Fourth quarter, I felt like things changed, and guys started fighting over screens just a little bit, or to force a rescreen, or to force the ball handler to pick up the ball and hit an outlet and have the Cavs defense scrambling back. And I thought it mostly led to good results. And I just wondered if you had noticed that, what you thought about that tweak, because it is, I feel like, the first major defensive tweak we've seen from Kenny in this season series.
Yeah, and I liked it when I saw it at the end of game 2. That is something that I have circled on, that I'm thinking about, of not showing your cards in the regular season, but something we might see in the playoffs. I think when you have a mentality of, we're okay if you do force the switch, we're going to make you force it. But we're not going to give you the soft switching. We trust our guys to fight around screens. And honestly, I think you can. I think DeAndre Hunter does a good job of screen navigation. I think Darius has really improved as a screen navigator. I think Donovan's doing a good job. I think Sam Merrill does a good job of that. Isaac Okoro, for years, has some of the best screen navigation metrics in the league defensively. I think you have the personnel to do that. If your mentality is, hey, we're going to make you really fight to earn that, I think that completely changes the complexion of what this series is defensively. Boston can take advantage of it at times, right? Like that you open yourselves up to counters in that spot. You open yourself up to slips. You open up yourself to the basketball IQ of the Celtics. But I think having that as the primary kind of look, and if Tatum does eventually force the switch on Darius and it takes 2-3 rescreens, but not only has he used energy to do so, the shot clock is now down at 8 when he goes to work, it is more likely that he is going to settle for one of those mid-range shots that he's not good at. You are baiting him again into those worst tendencies that has resulted in him being 10 of 26 against Darius. I just think that is...
If I can jump in too, it also allows you to send help to Darius, because he doesn't have as much time to swing. Like if he gets the switch with 8 seconds left on the shot clock and then takes the next 4 to 5 seconds to attack Darius and hit him a couple times on the way to the rim, even if he does get all the way to the rim, you can just bring help, because he can't kick it out to the opposite side of the floor unless they're going to...
And if he does, it's a grenade, right?
Yes.
Like that's a high degree of difficulty shot. It's different than a kick out with 12 seconds left when you're lining that up. The person standing in the corner is like, God, I've been watching you try to get this switch for the last 17 seconds, and I was not expecting you to throw this ball to me. That is something that I'd really like to see, because I think, having these tools in your arsenal, being able to go to zone and throwing them off. I thought Kenny's use of zone in this game disrupted Boston. I thought that they got out of their game a little bit to try to attack the zone, screwed up their rhythm offensively. Being able to soft switch at times, right? Like, because that's the other beauty about, when you're fighting through the switch. If they're expecting that and all of a sudden you do throw kind of a quick soft switch or a hard hedge or kind of a variety of different looks, you're able to all of a sudden keep them out of a rhythm offensively. I would like to see that. I'm just not a big fan in general of soft switching. I do think it's impressive that we're able to do it as frequently as we do. And I think that's a credit to the dedication of, guys 1 through 11 on this roster. But I do think that is one of those second gears that they can get to on the defensive end of the court that we may not see in the regular season.
Yeah, I think the reason why I have been sold coming out of that game is that, yes, your risk goes up when you fight, but one, so does theirs. Like Jason Tatum gets called for a really crucial moving screen because Darius stayed connected and tried to fight through. So they have to be better. They have to execute well. And then at the end of the day, I just was sitting there rewatching that fourth quarter and thinking, well, if we're not going to ask the Cavs defense to think really hard and not mess up, well then, like, we're not going to win a championship.
Right.
like this team is going to have to be able to live in the gray executionally. And, soft switching is nice because it is black and white. We're going to switch everything. It's really hard to mess it up. And
removes the risk of miscommunication.
Yes. But if they really want to defend at their best, they're going to have to live into that gray area of, well, we'd better be talking, we'd better be planning, we'd better, have our principles in order. And we're going to even just literally have to do our jobs well outside of the communication. We're going to have to stay connected and fight over the screen. We can't die on the screen if we're not going to switch.
Yeah.
We can't go too far under. There was one possession where Derek White walked into a pull-up three because Darius took a really wide angle under a Tatum screen, and Hunter gave a late contest, but it's one that White hits a lot. And so the risk goes up, but nothing ventured, nothing gained strategically. And something else I was thinking about, the other thing that has kind of brought me over to your side of the argument is the Cavs are bigger now, up and down the roster, and teams that are playing big guys at the 2 through 5, and oftentimes the 1 through 5 when Ty Jerome is out there, you have more margin for error to play more aggressive. There were plays where Hunter fought over the screen and he got screened, but he was able to get back to the hip of Tatum. There was a few plays where Dean Wade, who played his best defense of the entire season, I thought he was unbelievable in this game. But he was just fought through and stayed connected. And it's easier to stay connected when you're bigger and longer and you have other big, tall, long-armed dudes on the weak side patrolling any of those kick-out passes. I mean, Boston turned the ball over in that game more than they normally do. Tatum had 3 really brutal turnovers. Jaylen Brown had 3 turnovers. And they won the possession battle ever so slightly. Because, again, I just don't think you get to kick Boston's ass much because they're too good. But, like, all those things have tipped the scales for me, and I really like the change. And I think they're better built to play the way you were hoping they would play after the Hunter trade than they were before.
Yeah. Well, as I always say, I'm never wrong. I'm just early. And this is yet another one of those examples. And you were correct to call me out on the last podcast about how I put you in, a tough spot sometimes, being the one that's always right. It's a burden. It's a responsibility that I do not take lightly. I do want to, before we wrap this up, because we are going long, but I can't get out of this podcast without talking about it. Since he's come back from injury, it's not his best statistical stretch, but this is the best I've ever felt about Isaac Okoro. I am loving how he's being used. I am loving his impact. And I didn't feel it in real time, maybe because the start felt so terrible against Boston. But when I did my rewatch this morning, he jumped off the screen, particularly in that first quarter, in terms of his impact on that run that got the Cavs kind of back within range. He set a screen for DeAndre Hunter. He gets a wide open 3 in the corner. Set a screen to free up Donovan. Rolled to the basket. I think it was Donovan's second turnover. He shouldn't have been credited for it because Luke Cornett blew up Okoro and hit him in the head there. But then there was also a play as a screener where he set Donovan free. Donovan got the shot. He crashed to the glass and got the putback after Mobley tipped it to him. There was another one where he screened for Pritchard, and rather than flaring out to the corner as he traditionally would, he rolled to the basket. When he rolled to the basket, it forced Al Horford to pick him up. because Al Horford was forced to pick up Okoro there rather than ignore him going to the corner. That meant that Sam Hauser had to come over and help on Darius because Darius blew by Pritchard after that screen. That led to Darius hitting Dean Wade for a wide open three that he cashed. Okoro being used in this way, being used as kind of that Bruce Brown player, has changed his game from being all right, we're going to sit you in the corner, and if you hit your threes, you had an impactful game. If you don't, we can't have you out there. He is playing in a manner that has an impact in all of his minutes. He is more aggressive attacking the glass. He is making smart passes out of the roll. He is being used in a much, much more creative way, even better than that stretch he had earlier this season. And I think some of that is tied to what we said after the Hunter trade of he's going to get to play a lot more too. But I just feel like his understanding of what he needs to do within the flow of this team has improved dramatically.
Well, we've always liked his playmaking chops and his reads, and I just think the skill has never really caught up to the
handle's not good enough to access it, basically.
Basically. And I think Kenny has done a nice job of getting Isaac just moving around the court a little bit. I just think there's less. No one really hangs in one spot for too long in this offense. Like there's just constant, vacation of space, and I think Okoro really benefits from that because what it does is he's always been a pretty helpful cutter, and now he's asked to do it a lot as just part of the function of the offense. He's asked to do a lot more screening than I felt like he did last year. And when he catches the ball on the move, the skill stuff matters less. He doesn't have to beat someone off the dribble. He just has to go on a straight line and kick it where it needs to go, or go up with it. And the three, I think, does look a little bit better after getting that extra time off, which is nice. But what's nice is I think he's been helpful in all 4 games he's played since he's returned, without needing to be a particularly high volume 3-point shooter.
Yeah. And he's getting some of those event stats. He's creating second chance opportunities just by fighting for the ball. And I think again, some of that is tied to playing as a guard, where it's not his responsibility to run back in transition and take away the corner, right? He has a little bit more freedom to do that because so frequently when teams, a big man ends the possession, they're handing it off to the guard, and that little bit of time buys you the ability to crash the glass. He's getting some awesome blocks. He had a big one on Jaylen Brown. He had a crucial time. He blocked a jump shot today. Like he's looking more kind of athletic and explosive than I even recalled. And I just feel like even though the stats aren't jumping off the page, I really feel his impact. And I just feel like this is a version of Isaac Okoro that can make a difference for this team come the postseason.
Yeah, and I do think it's the first time that I felt like him in a low minutes role. He's playing, between 14 to 20 a game right now.
Yep.
It's the first time where it's like, well, hope he hits a 3 because otherwise we've wasted 12 minutes of offense. Yep. I feel like he's just like he's able to join the game in a flow a little bit better than he has, even though he's not playing a tremendous amount of minutes.
Yep. 4 of 8 from 3 these last couple games. He had a very timely one against Boston. That was great to see. Just really happy with that. Last little bit of news before we wrap this up. The Cavs announced today that JT Thor has been waived, no longer on a 2-way contract, and Naquan Tomlin has been rewarded for his strong play. I was a little surprised to see Thor waived. Talked about how, just given the fact that he has NBA experience, I thought that he would be the most prepared. But when you look at those G League stats, there's no denying that Tomlin has outperformed him so far this season.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of that. Tomlin is clearly the higher upside project, and with 2 ways, you're not looking to like hit a sack single, you're a sack fly. You're looking for singles, doubles, and triples, and I do think Tomlin has a much higher percentage shot of being that. He's still so early on his NBA journey, in his basketball journey, frankly. That he feels like, getting him on a multi-year deal seems really wise. You know how I feel about two ways. You cycle them, and I think the team kind of saw they saw enough of JT to be like, okay, here's where we think your ceiling is. Here's where our short-term opportunity is. It's just not the best fit, and instead went with another upside play in Tomlin, who, I think if you were to say who has the best shot of being on the roster 3 years from now, Tomlin or Thor, I would certainly have picked Tomlin, and I'm glad to see him get rewarded with a little bit more security, a little bit more investment from the team. It does open the question of, are they going to fill that 15th roster spot before the playoffs? Because I think both me and you thought JT Thor might be that guy, and now I have no clue.
Yeah, I thought it was very possible that one of the two-way guys were going to get that spot. It'll be interesting to see. They have, some options with what they can do there. The buyout deadline has now passed, so any players bought out after March 1st are not playoff eligible. So we have an idea of who's available on the buyout market. We have an idea of who's available on the free agency market. Do they look at someone like Mo Bamba, who I believe is playing with a G League team but not signed?
Birmingham, I think he just signed with.
Yeah, so there's an opportunity there. It'll be interesting to see what they do with that spot, but I do think you're correct in assuming that because Thor is waived, I don't think we're going to see a two-way promotion. I just I guess you could still see that, and then Thor is signed to a two-way again. But I just feel like from a procedural standpoint, the smart money's probably on that not being the case.
Yeah, what I'm curious, are they going to fill it at all? I hope they do. I hope they find someone they think that can help. I would love to see a big, especially in the wake of trading for DeAndre Hunter and adding Javonte Green. But we'll see. We'll see what they end up doing. If whoever they sign ends up playing, we're probably in a healthy amount of trouble. But hell, Dante Jones helped us win the NBA championship, so who knows?
Hey, it might just mean that we are up 40, because that could certainly happen with how damn good this team has been, even when it comes to the first round of the playoffs. So I think it's terrific. The fact that we're on a 10-game winning streak. When you looked at that schedule coming out of the All-Star break, you said
the ringer.
That's tough teams. We're going to be tested in that stretch. They answered the bell in all of those. They once again showed that they can come back multiple times. This team has grit. It has resilience. It has the ability to go out there and beat Boston. It's just going to be whether or not they are ready to do that this season. Yeah. And, you can't take these opportunities for granted, man.
No, and we asked if that Boston game was the last really important game of the season for this team, and I still kind of do think that. And now it's going to be a matter of really, what are they going to do? They've got 16 games in March. This is a dense month of basketball to play during a stretch where they have all but locked up the 1 seed in the Eastern Conference, and it's hard to motivate yourself in to beat an OKC team that, when you put all the percentages together, it's not a tremendous chance that you'll be playing them in the finals, just based on pure probability and odds. So I wonder how they treat this. How are guys going to get rest? Are guys going to be sharp? Is Kenny going to do some weird stuff because he's got this huge runway to play around with ideas, and God knows the man probably likes to tinker. So it's going to be an interesting month of Cavs basketball coming up, even if the wins and losses maybe get a little less important. I mean, I'll still care a lot because I really want him to get to 67, but it will be a motivation challenge as well, I'm sure.
Well, listen to your good friend Justin. We're getting to 67. Don't you worry. The beautiful thing is,
I think I'm there now, by the way, for what it's worth. I'm with you.
No matter what path we take, I think it still happens because this team has so much depth. You put Craig Porter Jr. out there, he looks great. You put, Jalen Tyson has given them good minutes. I think probably if someone made the horrible decision to make me a coach, I think the way that I would approach this is, hey, if we've got back-to-backs, I'm capping our starters' minutes at 28 for one of these, and the other one, prepared to play real minutes. I'm going to try to ramp your minutes up, but I'm going to be strategic with this. We're going 12 these games. These ones we're treating as dress rehearsals. I think that they have the depth and the flexibility to do that. Continue to manage, any injuries and guys getting banged up. Be cautious in those spots and just use it to experiment further, right? Like you might not play a Boston or OKC, but you're going to play a Giannis. You're going to play the Knicks. You're going to have opportunities to try out some stuff against very good players and very good teams.
Yeah, it's going to be fun, man. Go Cavs.
Go Cavs. It is going to be fun. It's always fun talking to you, buddy. It's always fun going live. Thanks to everyone that tuned in live on YouTube. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. Click that notification bell so you know when we're going live. If you're listening via podcast and you want to support us, leave us a rating, leave a review, subscribe, unsubscribe, resubscribe, and help cook those books. If you want to be part of Chasetown's exclusive Discord chat, send a screenshot of the review to chasetownpod@gmail.com. However you choose to support us, we really do appreciate it. Make sure you guys are staying safe out there. Until next time, go Cavs.